this in presentation.
Welcome. We'll begin in a minute. Give it one more minute before we get started. In the meantime, feel free to introduce yourself, your business in the chat. We'd love to hear more about you. Welcome. My name is Jamie Schenker-Passero. I am the Director of Programs for the Temple Small Business Development Center. We are a nonprofit, one of 1,000 that is funded by the Small Business Administration to help small businesses start and grow. And we do this with our no-cost consulting and with our training programs, and you are here for one of them today. This is the 4th module in our 6 Pivoting to Procurement series. So today you are here for local contracting. You may have attended some of the previous sessions with focus more on contracting on a federal level. So today is a new unit to help our clients understand more about what contracting opportunities exist on the local level. Joining us today, we have Monique Nesmith-Joyner, who is the Procurement Commissioner for the City of Philadelphia. We have Sophia De Leon, who is the owner of El Mercury. They're in Center City. They make delicious food, including beautiful churros. You should definitely check them out if you have not. We have also used them for catering at the SBDC as well. And we have Kenyatta James of the Economy League and Page program. For today, we will give each person a bit of time to talk about their experience or their program. And then we will have time for questions. So we'll leave plenty of time for questions. And I also have some questions to help facilitate the conversation. We understand that you may be in that earlier stage of considering how to bring procurement and contracting opportunities to your business. So we will go with that lens. But if there's anything more of an advanced question that you'd like to ask, the Q&A is the best place to put that. So we will start with a brief presentation from Monique from the city to talk about city procurement. So let me know if you can share your screen. You should have that capability. I'll stop my share just in case. And you're muted too, just so you know. All right, we can see you now.
All righty, good afternoon. I am Monique Nesmith-Joyner. I am the Commissioner for the Procurement Department for the City of Philadelphia. And basically what that means is that my department oversees all contracting for the City of Philadelphia. That means, everything from a petty cash purchase, which is, anything $750 and over, to our largest multi-million-dollar contracts. So the City of Philadelphia is governed by the Home Rule Charter and the Philadelphia Code. which dictate how we let our procurements, how we dictates our contracts, and it provides the laws for everything that we do here in procurement and contracting, and it's all approved by the Office of City Council. So the next two slides basically break out the home rule charter, number one. It gives basic requirements for our service supplies, equipment, and our concessions types of contracts, which I'll detail and give a few examples for a little bit later. But the primary section is 8200, which is for contracts and contract and procurement procedures. So advertising procedures, our sealed bids, which are competitive contracts, which means that we have to award to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. Our formal bidding thresholds, which are for this fiscal year, our micro purchases are 40,000, which is our most informal. Our small order purchases are up to 88,000, which is still an informal, streamlined process by which we let our bids, and there aren't as many requirements needed from the vendor in order to contract with the city. And then anything above that 88,000 is our more formal, what we call long form, if you will, contracting process. We also have bonding requirements as well as cooperative purchasing requirements and the like, all regulated by 8200. Our Philadelphia Code is a bit more specific. That is for our professional services and our best value. So these are RFP opportunities where we can award not necessarily based only on low price, but other criteria, technical criteria that are laid out in the RFP. So Chapter 17 of the Philadelphia Code outlines all of the requirements that are listed here. This presentation will be provided to Temple so that it can be sent out to you all and you can read through some of these bullets at your leisure. So in terms of the types of procurement, this slide for me is very important. I do include this on our presentations because I want businesses to understand that city contracting is attainable. We purchase a variety of goods and services, professional services. So you'll see here to the far left, our service supplies and equipment. It could be food services. It could be facilities maintenance. And here recently, our facilities maintenance has included long-term services for the migrants that have been coming into the city. So think of facilities maintenance, also including security, also including laundering services, also including, case management wraparound services. So there are a myriad of things. Public works is our public construction. So any construction that occurs on city property falls into our public works category. Concessions is something that people don't realize the city actually contracts for. And concessions are instances where businesses pay a rate to the city to sell their product on city property. So if you think about Made in America, that is a concession that occurs, annually. Welcome America is a concession. All of the concessionaires that are at the airport, those are all, concessionaires with which we contract. And then for our professional services, which is our largest category, those are all, legal services, consulting types of services that we contract for, and those are all under RFP. All departments, any department can let opportunities for service supplies, equipment, concessions, and professional services. Public works is a bit more narrow. We have 5 primary departments, again, for public construction. Alrighty, so there are a number of requirements for vendors' response for those service supplies and equipment, that's SS&E and public works. Vendors must register in our systems. There are quote requirements, and your quotes must meet the specifications of the bid. Multiple vendors can be awarded based on their low price. So if you think about something like, I don't know, what we call soaps and detergents, for example. If we need, that would include sanitizer, it would include, hand soap, a variety of things that will fall under soaps and detergents. It could be janitorial supplies as well. If multiple vendors submit quotes, we can award those multiple vendors based on their low price per item. We have participation goals that are typically set. And of course, there are document requirements and fees that are required for all contracts. For professional services, it's a little bit more lengthy, as well as for best value opportunities. The requirements are a bit more lengthy. These are RFPs, requests for proposals, where the city outlines the background for the need of the project, the scope of work for the project, a description of the department who's requesting the service, as well as the evaluation criteria by which the RFP will be reviewed and scored and eventually awarded. For these types of contracts, the terms and conditions may be negotiated, which, is not typical in our other procurement types. The other caveat, though, for professional services and best values is that campaign disclosures are required. So what that means is if you as an individual and or your business or your affiliates or other entities under your business have provided funding or funds or participated in any type of campaign activity, that needs to be disclosed to the city. And there are some requirements based on, again, that chapter 17 of the Philadelphia Code, by which we have to adhere and meet some compliance requirements. But I won't get into that here, but I just want to let you know that's a requirement. Here are other again, list of requirements. Now, this slide and this information is to bring awareness. It is not to deter anyone from, being interested in or going for a municipal government contract. I like to let folks know it is not easy to get a municipal contract. I do think that it is worth it for your business if you can and you're interested to go for a municipal contract, but there are requirements that a business must meet, and here listed are a few. Again, this will be presented so that you can read through at your leisure. I do want to highlight the local business purchasing initiative. This is an initiative that was introduced to council by former Councilman former Councilman Green in 2019. And what this did was it created levels of contracting and reduced the requirements at that micro purchase and that small order purchase level, making these contracts more attainable for minority women, disabled, small businesses that are interested in doing business and getting their foot in the door with the city, but maybe, don't have the myriad of requirements or the bonding that is needed or insurance that may be needed for those higher dollar value opportunities. So you see here in the second bullet that we increased the threshold to 34,000, from 34,000 up to 75,000. Well, that was in 2019. These dollar values increase annually based on the consumer price index. So this year, that dollar value is 88,000 rather than 75,000. In the third bullet, you'll see that we've reduced the processing time from 110 days down to 30 to 45 days for these smaller dollar value contracts. So getting you in the door quicker, to do business with the city. And again, there are requirements that are involved, but here, these are live links. So when you get the presentation, you'll be able to click this link. This leads you to our local business certification, which is free of charge. And there's a list of criteria that businesses must meet in order to be deemed eligible for a local certification. I have some general links here. Again, the local business entity, how to become certified as a minority women-owned or disabled-owned business if you so desire. And also this link is general information about doing business with the city, which is a monthly offering from the Office of Economic Opportunity that provides information to businesses on an ongoing basis about how to prepare yourself and again, ready yourself to do business with the city. So a number of resources are available on a monthly basis through this engagement. And I have maybe 2 more slides. So the contracts.phila.gov is a consolidated website where all of our opportunities can be found. So you'll see just below here, this is a public works pre-qualification opportunity. So you would go on this actual site, contracts.phila.gov, and you'll see all the opportunities on this site that are available. And then I will skip through to my last slide for the day about these are our 2 e-procurement sites. Details here for what opportunities you'll find. Let me double back a second. When you go on Contracts Hub, the list of opportunities are there. When you click on the opportunity, it will lead you to one of these sites. We created Contracts Hub because the city right now does not have a consolidated site where we let everything, and it's confusing for vendors to try to figure out what is where. So we created Contracts Hub to solve for that. This link is for the Office of Economic Opportunity, again, providing support and resources for those who would like to become registered and or those who are already registered and interested in doing business. And also the Office of Business Support that sits in our Commerce Department. The Office of Business Support provides one-on-one support for small businesses that are interested not only in city business, but also in private sector business as well. So that is an excellent resource. I believe, yes, that is the end of the presentation. When you receive this, though, there are maybe 6 more slides after this that go into more detail per contract type, so you can get a bit more information and understanding. I will also include my contact information in the chat and as well to Temple, so that when you receive the document, you'll also have my department's contact information, but mine as well, should you have any questions.
Thank you, Monique.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
that. I have questions, but I think I will let I will wait a little bit because I want to make sure that we have time for Sophia and Kenyatta. So I will pass over the Zoom screen to Sophia, and I would love for you to tell us a little bit about how you began incorporating local contracting into your business, if that's something that was always a part of your business model, and if not, when did you decide that that would be a good revenue stream for you? And then also if you can speak to how much percentage-wise of your business has that become, questions like that, that you know somebody who was in your shoes when you first started might want to know, all of that like nitty-gritty, those kind of questions.
Thank you, Jamie. So yes, I own a Mercury on 21st and Chestnut and at the Reading Terminal. And my background is not as a chef. So I'm from Guatemala originally, and I moved here for college. I did marketing, I did an MBA, and eventually started a Mercury as a catering business. So originally, I used to set up shop in different buildings. And then from there, I realized that, catering was a really good, reliable source of revenue. So when I opened my first location in 21st and Chestnut in 2018, I knew that catering was, should be at the forefront of everything we did. So we do a lot of business with the University of Pennsylvania. We do business with all the universities, but I would say Penn is probably our number one customer, probably because we're almost next to them. but it's about 35% of my sales. And what is really good is that, well, one, they are volume and they're guaranteed, right? Versus, in-store sales, which shift, it's raining, might have no foot traffic, it's snowing, it's too hot, it's A, B, C, D, E, like in-store sales, foot traffic shifts a lot, but catering is guaranteed. So I made sure that, we had a really strong catering program that would apply and that would interest like these big nonprofits or these big buyers. So one of the things we did was, as a minority, I think being a minority is an advantage sometimes because, it helps become a preferred caterer vendor. So the first thing we did was get enrolled with the University of Pennsylvania as, again, a woman and a minority, like woman of color. And we are on their website as a preferred vendor, which means that whenever people are looking for, quick lunches, Latin American flavors, women owned, like we always pop up. Another thing that I thought was really, it was more of an afterthought that didn't come up until after, is the fact that a lot of her food is, gluten-free, vegetarian, that we are able to adapt to different tastes and different trends. So, now people have a lot of allergies, right? Like people have allergies to tomato, to cilantro, to peanuts, I've seen it all. So the fact that, like, we adapt to whatever people want, I think, and we're nimble, like really puts us ahead often from like bigger competitors that, might have the same price and a bigger name, but also maybe are not as able to handle like these small requests as we are. So being nimble.
And just to add, I know not everybody here is going to be a food business, right? But a takeaway here though is thinking about the buzzwords for your industry and thinking about searchability with those kind of terms for your specific industry. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yes, exactly. So searchability, keywords, yeah, both really important.
So you said that you had it in your head that this was going to be something part of your business go like from the beginning, right? And exactly. with the institutions in particular, it was just a matter of getting on their list, not necessarily a connection. But it was just kind of where do I put my name down?
Exactly. Yes. And then from there, it's been all word of mouth. So I think, part of what's important here is like customer service is key in any industry, right? So if you do a good job, people want to tell other people, and nothing is better than a referral, because then you get someone's trust, and then that person already is putting their trust in you to say that you gave them a good service. So somebody else is more likely to buy from you. So, customer service is key. But yes, we started out just with a few organizations. Like, I knew that they had La Casa, for example. La Casa is like a Latin American organization. And they have events really often. So like I reached out to them, and then from there it spread. So sometimes it's just finding those key organizations that are similar to what you offer, and then engaging with them and again, giving them really good customer service to make sure that they want to spread the word.
And I know next week, I believe our class is going to be on market research. So thinking about where to find opportunities. Have you had to do any bids, or have you worked with the city at this point?
We've done a little bit with the city. We've done some bids. We haven't actually gotten them. But I have worked a little bit with the city and done like a little bit of catering with mostly small organizations at City Hall, but no major contracts.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And we'll get to questions, but before we do, I will pass it over to Kenyatta. And I think it's a good segue, your experience for Kenyatta to talk about what his program does.
And Sophia, do you guys do that delicious horchata ice cream? That's you, right?
Yes, that's up.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Oh, good. I'm
Definitely
so happy to
keep
hear
that going.
that.
So I run PAGE, which stands for Philadelphia Anchors for Growth and Equity. We're a regional supplier diversity collaborative. We are charged with helping mid-sized to large MBEs and WBEs grow through procurement with anchor institutions and increasingly through public works. So our anchor institutions are colleges, hospitals, and corporations in the area. So the usual suspects, Temple University, Temple Medicine, um, University of Pennsylvania, Penn Medicine, the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, Drexel University, Thomas Jefferson University and Hospital System, as well as Independence Blue Cross. And then we have allies throughout the region in places like Rutgers, Cooper Hospital, some of the smaller colleges like Swarthmore in the area that are all looking to diversify their supply chains. What we do is we really sit in this sales process, and we try to eliminate the friction in between the minority business community and the institutions that are trying to diversify their supply chain. So some of that comes from, of course, actually making the introductions. One thing that's really interesting about institutions is that even though they all have procurement, they don't all purchase all of their things through procurement. So in many cases, the decision maker for whatever you sell will be someone outside of the procurement arena. So for example, if you're in construction, procurement does not purchase construction at almost all of the major hospitals and colleges in the area. If you're in the security space, procurement probably does not purchase that sort of facility management sort of product. If you're in catering, that's probably not being directly purchased by procurement. It's being purchased by individual departments to fit their needs. So that can make the sales process really difficult. We find that supplier diversity people almost always sit within a procurement department. So even when you go through the supplier diversity channels to try to get opportunities, it might not be all of the relationships you need in order to get actual work with these institutions. So we manage a diverse array of relationships with a bunch of these institutions. We try to understand what their upcoming opportunities are. And then when there's qualified minority businesses, we try to make sure that they are a part of that bid process. Within that, we do a couple things. One, we can help you prepare your bid itself. Think about the language, think about the structure, think about if there's a presentation required, what should be in there, the order it should be in. Selling to institutions is very different than selling to mid-market, and a lot of businesses making that jump can struggle because it is a completely different sales process. Like you really are learning a different sales process in order to sell to institutions. Unfortunately, it's also a little bit different than selling to government. So while there is some crossover, it's not completely analogous. So when you get to the size where you're still dealing with mid-market, you're dealing with institutions, and you're doing work with government, you kind of have to have three separate sales pipelines for each one of these groups, which can be really frustrating. But the organizations that do it well are the organizations that see the most growth. So if you want really rapid growth, that's going to have to be the way it's done. We also do help people in certain sectors of public work, specifically things related to infrastructure. So if you're trying to get on the infrastructure projects, if you're in construction or broadband or something like that, we may have services that can support you through that sales process, as well as help you build the necessary relationships. Um, we also provide some capital. We are capital connectors. And then we also have a program that we call the Hurdle Fund. And the Hurdle Fund is a grant program that we use to pay last minute barriers to people getting opportunities with institutions. The classic case of this is insurance. So for example, if you want to do even basic work with a hospital, if it requires you or your staff to go in the hospital, the insurance requirements for doing that work in a hospital environment are probably much higher than anything that you're currently carrying. So we find minority businesses often don't want to purchase that insurance because you don't know if you're going to get the contract, but the hospital won't hire you until you have the insurance. So our grant program is able to step in that in between time, we kind of verify with the hospital that, you're one of the finalists, and then we directly pay for the insurance so that that is no longer a barrier. And then you are set up to be able to get that contract. The reason why we do that is we know that once you are able to work with one of our partners, you can work with all of them, right? So if you can do hospital work at CHOP, you can do hospital work at Penn Medicine, at Jefferson, at Cooper, which really allows your program, your business to expand within our program and service more of our partners, which is our goal. And then, like I said, we also advocate for changes to these different institutions with the way that they design their RFPs, the way that they do outreach to minority businesses, the way they set their goals. Some of this is legislation, so we work with city council to try to figure out how this could be better. And some of it is internal skill building with them. So, for example, um, University of Pennsylvania figured out that they could drastically lower their payment terms for minority and women-owned businesses relatively easily. Their cost of capital is much lower than whoever they're working with because they're giant, have a huge endowment. And they were able to pay on much faster terms than what they had originally set up for net 30 or net 60. So they created an internal program to pay vendors faster. And once University of Pennsylvania did it, we were able to go to Independence Blue Cross and to the Children's Hospital and others and say, hey, can you improve your payment terms as well? And they have been able to do it. So there's programs at a bunch of our anchors to lower their payment terms, either in general or for minority businesses, which we hope to help improve the entire cash flow system for the ecosystem. So everybody's getting paid a little bit faster. Everybody can grow with less debt, and everybody can just be a little bit more effective in the business world. So that's what we do. We work as both kind of a sales consultant, an internal advocate, and sometimes a capital provider for those businesses that are doing institutional work, are looking to do institutional work. And while we do touch a bunch of different sectors, our probably main areas of focus are real estate and construction, where we do a lot of work, IT, generally professional services, but really probably HR, accounting, and legal within that professional services bucket, as well as IT consulting and management consulting within that bucket, facilities management, things like security. And then we have a pretty good food program. So we've worked with a lot of people in the catering space to either help them get capital for new equipment, make connections at Aramark, and expand their growth. Examples include Desserts by Dana and Star Fusion and others that we've partnered with in the past. So that's what we do as a program. That's who we help and how we provide support. A couple of tidbits of information that I think are always helpful for people trying to do this work. Institutional RFPs are very flexible. Like if you've ever created a job description, you know that you kind of copy and paste an old job description and make adjustments. That's the way most RFPs are written at institutions, unfortunately. They're not always super well thought out, so there is an opportunity to go in and say, hey, I noticed this, there's this issue, I thought about this, what about this? And sometimes you can get an adjustment, or at least you can get in the conversation. One thing that a lot of businesses don't realize is that for most institutions, you can apply to a portion of an RFP. So if you see an RFP for, a multi-million dollar job and you're like, oh, I can't do all of this, but I can do $200,000 worth of work, you can create that proposal and send it to the institution. And they will keep that in mind as they look at other people that are doing larger portions of the work, and they might try to pair you with someone. Another strategy would be to say, who was the prime last time, or who are the largest applicants on this, and then reach out to those businesses to work with them as a partner, as a subcontractor. Most businesses will work as an institutional subcontractor before they work as an institutional prime contractor. So really having a good lay of the land of the primes in whatever field you're in, and being able to partner with them to get in the door with that institution is important. But you have to develop a relationship with the institution even when you are a subcontractor. If you're confused on exactly how to do that, let me know. You can feel free to reach out to me and I will support you in that process. Another really important thing to think about is that institutions are slow and they give you no feedback through the entire process, right? When you're selling to a person, even mid-market, something could be a multi-million-dollar business, but you probably met someone who was like giving you like facial readings and information in the call that's letting you know, like, oh man, I'm killing this, or maybe this isn't going to work out. Institutions, it is like you've got one procurement person that takes it back to a group of people that are a mixture of like accountants, lawyers, and people whose job it is to make sure the institution doesn't waste money, right? Like they're trying to keep costs down. And they're just kind of reviewing this information and then kicking it back so you're not getting feedback throughout the process. But you can ask for it. And I think that that's a mistake that a lot of businesses make, is that they assume that they can't receive this information. You don't know how you're doing. You don't know the timelines. You don't know their decision-making process, and it can become really frustrating and really difficult. Um, you can get some of that information, or you can reach out to an organization like ours. There's also the Urban League, the Enterprise Center, that might have relationships with these institutions, and sometimes we can ask on your behalf. And I'll leave time for questions.
Thank you, Kenyatta. I'm going to do some follow-ups with you on some of what you mentioned, but I wanted to get one question to Sophia before she has to depart. And you know, we heard Kenyatta talk about payment terms and some of the requirements. Is that something that you experienced as a pain point where you were starting out? What other considerations do you have to add in terms of insurance, and just kind of, yeah, just that part of it? Would love to hear what that was like for you.
Well, we've had varieties of payment terms. So for example, Penn, like Kenyatta mentioned, is great because they pay us within 10 days, and it's like we submit the PO and I know that I'm going to get a direct deposit within 10 days. However, HUP, which is the hospital of the University of Pennsylvania, is a much like different story. So it's about 3 months before we see a check. And CHOP is between those two. So it's not 10 days, it's not 3 months, it's about 1 month. So we kind of have to adapt. I mean, fortunately, our biggest customer pays on time, and these two are not like as big for us. But, we definitely, there was a point during the pandemic when we were doing a lot of business with the hospital of the University of Pennsylvania, and we really needed that cash flow. So I actually had to get a loan because we needed the cash flow, and I had to still pay. And, fortunately, a lot of things could wait during the pandemic, but that's not the case right now, right? So like, I can't pay my rent late. I can't pay my staff late. Like everything has to be on time. So, having that cash flow is always really important. And then in terms of insurance, when you have your own vehicle, you need to have like vehicle insurance. You need to have an umbrella insurance. If you're doing offsites, you need to have a COI at all times, like a certificate of insurance where you are able to insure whoever's business is you're doing business for. So insurance is key, and making sure you have someone that you can, I wouldn't say trust, but like reach out easily is great, because, especially when you're doing a lot of offsite, like if we have, during the summer, we do a lot of outdoor events, and every one of those events requires us to get a COI, which is the certificate of insurance. And, if I've changed insurance agencies multiple times, and if we don't have an agent that is able to respond within an appropriate amount of time, then that means that the customer is waiting, right? So make sure that you have like a good relationship with that insurance agent, and that you're able to reach out to them, and they're, they can get you what you need within 24 hours. I think more than 24 hours is not acceptable.
One thing I will add for you, Sophia, make sure that CHOP and that the and HUP and these others, make sure that they have you listed within their procurement and payment system as a local minority woman-owned business. many times even those groups might have preferential payment terms. And if you're not listed properly because you've never said anything and
Yeah.
procurement or whoever's buying is separate from the people paying you, they might just not know. And they might be paying you on payment terms that aren't up to date for how you're categorized. So it's a conversation that you should always have with whoever is like on the emails for the actual payments. Have that
Okay.
conversation with them about payment terms because you might be able to get that sped up.
Okay. That's good to know. Thank you. I'll make sure to have
Literally
that
what I'm
conversation.
here for.
Sophia, any other tips or mistakes to avoid before you have to head out?
I would say don't bite more than you can chew, right? Like, sometimes like it's easy to get excited when, you get listed and all of a sudden you're getting all this business, but we put our menus on our website and that was a big success because people were able to order online and even if you're a nonprofit, you're able to get your sales tax exempt status. And it's been great, except that sometimes at the beginning we were allowed people to put in orders 3 at a time. So we were coming late to that third order. And again, customer service is king, right? So if we are not delivering what we initially offered, then even if we have more business, then we're not doing it well. So just make sure you know like what your capacity is and what your limit is, and then slowly build from there.
That makes a lot of sense. I really appreciate your time and your food. Thanks for joining us today. I know you have to head out, and I'm going to keep going with the questions for our other panelists. Thank you so much, Sophia. Hope to see
Absolutely.
you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
So Kenyatta, you mentioned that a good strategy is to start as a subcontractor for anchor institutions. Monique, is that the same with the city?
I think it depends on your business. If we see a lot of subcontracting, of course, in our public construction, public works field. There may not be, let me just give an example. If we have a dredging project with the water department, there are only 2 dredging businesses in the city, in the area. I don't even, in like the metro area, there are only 2 dredging businesses. So they're huge, but they need, they subcontract some of the work that is not directly just the dredging. So in that space, we do see a lot of subcontracting. We also see it sometimes in some of our other contracts, but it's primarily in our public works and public construction. In our professional services space, 9 times out of 10, well, I should say maybe 80% of the time, we are direct with the prime. And there are very few subcontractors in that space. So it really depends on the type of work or the type of business that you have.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And Kenyatta, do anchor institutions require businesses to hold socioeconomic certifications?
So anchor institutions are not a monolith. Some do, some don't. Some will allow you to self-certify, so that you'll show up, they'll be like, oh, person of color, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are like, we don't believe you, we need you to have this certification. It depends. I think if you plan to do work with the city and you do all of the city paperwork, you will have pretty much all of the anchor paperwork. So I think that if that is something that is your goal within the next couple of months, it's worth it to start with the city's level of paperwork, which is MBE certification, DBE certification, a certain set of financials, like the way everything is set up for the city. In general, that will work for most institutions. Institutions are a little bit more flexible, right? They don't have to take the lowest bid on projects. They can be a little bit more flexible in the sales process. So there are differences, but overall, they're going to want to see similar things.
What
And the city's not flexible.
Kenyatta, what if you feel as a business owner really intimidated by the certification process and you're like, oh, that sounds like a lot. Maybe I should just try for an institution and never do business with
Mhm.
the city. Is that a wrap?
Well, can I chip in really
Yeah, of
quickly?
course.
Certification is not a requirement of the city. If you know, you can definitely contract with the city being a minority business owner, not certified as a minority. It's not a requirement. We do have participation requirements on our contracts, allowing for vendors who are certified to get a piece of the pie, but it's not overall a requirement to do business with the city. You know, we hear from vendors all the time, Kenyatta, to your point, you see me, why do I need to certify, you know, that I am a minority business? It's visible that I am, you know, representing my business and that I am both woman and minority, right? And we understand that, you know, but there are presently you know, opportunities for certification, and in some instances, you know, on federal contracts, right, in terms of the DBE, there are requirements. But for
Yeah,
local contracting, it's, you know, it's there's purpose and reason for it, but it's not a hard and fast requirement.
yeah, I think when it comes to like the conversation around certification is an interesting one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, I ran a minority owned business for a couple years before I came over to Page. And I had never tried so hard to be a person of color. It is a weird process.
Mm-hmm.
But there are pass-throughs, right? There are bad actors that will put out
Absolutely.
women or people of color or whatever to be the face of something that is actually owned by a completely different group of people. So there is a reason for it, and I can understand
Mm-hmm.
that reasoning. It also does make reporting easier. So while not everyone requires it, many people appreciate it. And there are conversations around, I don't want to say set asides because that can be kind of a bad word and it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
fully exist in the way we think. But there are opportunities specifically for women, minority, diverse,
Mm-hmm.
owned businesses in different contexts. So it is something to consider. I think the most important thing is to know the anchors you want to work with or the institutions you want to work with and understand their process and their goals, right? For example, the city is doing a ton of work. We'll be doing a ton more work because there's going to be bipartisan infrastructure bill money and other types of
Mm-hmm.
money flowing through the city. And all of that is going to have minority goals attached to it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be a lot of energy spent making sure that there's enough minority businesses to reach these goals for these projects. So if you're a minority business that hasn't traditionally gone through this process, but you feel like it could be helpful, now might be a good time, especially since some of these certifications can take longer than others. But if you're
Agree.
mostly like a professional services firm that wants to work with like large nonprofits, or even in the corporate world, it might not matter in the same way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could definitely agree with that. One of the intentions of the bipartisan infrastructure law, the bill funds, as we call it, is to utilize historically underutilized businesses to ensure that historically underutilized businesses have access to the millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that will be funneling into the city over the next several years, actually over the next decade. Part of the purpose, not only from a business standpoint, but also from a workforce standpoint, to increase the BIPOC community's representation in trade skills, labor, workforce. So yes, that is absolutely correct. And being able to take advantage of it as a minority or women-owned business does require you to have that certification, and it requires you to have and or a DBE certification. So you're absolutely right.
Thank you. We have some questions coming into the chat in the Q&A. Does a business need to be based in Philadelphia to work with Page?
Have to be based in the region. Certain things. So like if the Commerce Department is doing something, they're gonna want you to have a 191 um area code, zip code, right? Like they're gonna want you to be in Philly. Whereas some of our
Has to go?
institutions,
Like has to be, or it's preferable?
it's gonna be preferable because city taxes, they want to pay for city businesses that also pay city
Mhm.
taxes, right?
Mhm.
But some of our institutions, like CHOP just opened a big location out in King of Prussia. Penn Medicine has locations in Jersey. So like depending on the institution, they might actually prefer that you're close to another offsite. So if you're in the region, the Economy League, which is the organization that is the fiscal sponsor and support organization for Page, we look at the entire greater Philadelphia region, so like Northern Delaware, South Jersey, 5 counties, Philadelphia itself. So I'm more than happy to talk with any businesses that are in that region, and we do focus on minority and women-owned businesses within that regional scope.
There was a question earlier in the chat about is there a process to submit unsolicited proposals? So I imagine that's for you, Monique.
Is there a process to submit unsolicited proposals?
Maybe for a more unique product.
Yeah. They're really, you can make an attempt to get before a department, but it is not, it really isn't advisable in the city. What we encourage, excuse me, is for businesses to look at our contracts hub, see what opportunities are out there, register on our e-procurement sites. Even if you're not registered as a business, our e-procurement sites have a public facing component where you can research what opportunities we've let in the past, who the awarded vendors were, and do some due diligence on that end. We will soon have a forecasting document that will be published. So it will give an outlook, about an 18-month outlook on potential projects and potential bid opportunities with the city of Philadelphia. But, cold calling, the city will not get you necessarily a response. It is better if you register your business with either of our e-procurement systems, indicate what is an NIGP code, and basically that's a commodity code that indicates to us what your business is selling. You can align as many NIGP codes as your business, offers, and then when we let an opportunity that aligns with those codes, you'll receive an email alerting you that an opportunity is available, that you can either submit a proposal if it's an RFP or submit a quote for it if it is a bid opportunity.
Yeah, I think I saw a little bit about this question. What I would do in this person's case is register with the city, make sure that you're within their procurement system, and then see who is providing a similar service to the city, because there might be an opportunity to reach out to whoever the prime is and talk about the service you provide. The city is not like super flexible. So just because they need something and you can provide that thing doesn't mean that they're in a position to actually have you do that, right?
Absolutely.
A lot of that is going to depend on how much they have to spend. Is it under the threshold where they can quickly and easily bid it out? Is it part of an existing contract, or could it be folded into an existing contract? Because maybe whoever the prime is expected to handle it, but they don't have the capacity. And then if you go to that prime, the city might rework their existing contract to fit this important need. That's going to happen much more easily than like, oh, this person can do this thing. Great, let's give them money. The city does not work like that.
Right. It does not.
I was also thinking, Commerce used to have their coffee with Commerce, maybe to get a connection that way, but I don't think that they're doing that anymore. And I would have said attend all of the midweek events that you can where the city is involved, but that was last week. So I would keep my eye open for opportunities where the city would be represented to try to chat with somebody. Wherever you are in the city, you will have a business services manager The city is divided up. I think there are about a dozen.
Mhm.
And they are supposed to, they're tasked with connecting business owners with city resources, like maybe helping you with L&I, things like that. But maybe, because then at least they're a city employee. That's another way to get in, because they really are for you in your zip code. So yeah, that's a tricky one, but hopefully some of the information we provided was helpful.
If you really want to bother somebody and try to get something done, I would either talk to someone in OEO because they're outwardly receptive and they know a lot about what's happening, or I would bother like your city council person. They're not
And
gonna know, right?
you
Like
may
they're
be
not gonna
able to
know.
find contact information for who, we're not going to give it to you, but you may want to go back on the MedWeek website and check any event that was hosted by the city and see if there was contact information. Maybe that's a way to kind of get to some of the people that Kenyatta's mentioning.
Mhm. Or if you look on our public e-procurement sites, if you look there, there's contact information on every opportunity. Every single opportunity has a contract person in the department that was seeking said thing, whether it's a good or service or professional service or otherwise. In terms of doing your homework and readying yourself, understanding what the requirements were, again, recognizing who was awarded, the contract, whether it's a low bid opportunity or not, the information is there. There's some keywords, that you could search. But all of our awards back to 2017 are available on PHL contracts, and it goes back even further on our e-contract Philly for professional services.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that is a great plug for our next series, which is the market research tool module for next week.
Mhm.
And I know we're getting close on time, but I just wanted to mention, get those last minute questions in the chat. We'll probably have time to answer one more, but I also just put in 2 links. One is a link to a survey. We're required to have this completed by our SBA funders. And I also put in everybody's favorite, our client's favorite resource doc. So this has a library of our previous webinars. We have about 200 that we've done. It also has a tab on funding. We try to keep tabs on funding opportunities for small businesses. Largely, they're not going to be for startups, but it's just something to poke around and see what might apply to you. So that's in the chat. And if you have to head out for the day, we understand. And before we totally close out, I will thank Monique and Kenyatta so much for taking the time to talk to all of us today. Not only did we get some great general information, but we got some very handy tips and tricks. So I think that is always appreciated, just tangible tips and tricks, I think. So thank you to both of you. Let's stick around for one more minute for any last questions. We may have gotten to all of them though.
Okay, thank you for the
Thank you
opportunity.
everyone for participating. Yeah, thank you, Jamie, for putting this together.
Our pleasure.